Welcome to Read It or Skip It.
where we dive deep into the stories everyone's talking about.
Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of nonfiction, we're tackling a review, actually. A review of Lisa Jewell's novel, None of This Is True.
Right. And the premise itself is, well, it's pretty compelling, isn't it?
It really is. The reviewer highlights this core idea, a podcast, right, about a seemingly ordinary woman.
Yeah, just your average person.
But then it spirals. It goes somewhere really dark, sinister even. The reviewer called it perfect thriller material.
And you can see why. That slow burn, the feeling that something's deeply wrong under the surface. Classic thriller setup.
Exactly. It reminds me of those, true crime docs where everything looks normal until bam.
Definitely. And the review mentions this multimedia format the book uses.
Oh yeah, that caught my eye too. It's not just reading prose.
No, you get podcast transcripts mixed in, and later on, even bits from like a Netflix documentary about the whole thing.
Which, according to the review, really keeps things moving. It's not just a gimmick.
No, it seems crucial. It gives you different perspectives, keeps the pace brisk, and importantly, scatters clues and red herrings.
Making it deliberately unreliable, I guess. Which fits the title.
Absolutely. None of this is true. The review points out that this structure immediately makes you question what you're being told. You're constantly trying to piece it together.
So our mission today, really, is to pull out the key insights from this specific review. Give you a good sense of whether this book might be your kind of thing without you having to read the whole thing first.
Exactly. A solid overview based on what this reviewer thought. And one thing they signal early on is about the central character, Josie.
Right, the woman the podcast is about.
Yeah. The reviewer uses the word manipulative pretty much right off the bat, so not exactly setting her up as a hero.
Definitely not.
Ugh.
No easy relatability there. But the review does hint there's more to her, like hidden depths, something genuinely unsettling.
Yeah, malevolent is a word that comes up. It's not just if something bad happened, but what Josie herself is capable of doing.
And apparently, she keeps her daughters a secret for a while. That seems like a deliberate choice to build that sense of unease.
The reviewer thinks so. They mention it amplifies that feeling of concealed darkness. They even compare it a bit to Jewell's other books, similar suspense, maybe a bit more subtle here.
Okay.
And they talk about a specific turning point, a moment that just blows the story open with possibilities.
The plot thickens.
And then those Netflix documentary bits come in later. The review really emphasizes how that adds another whole layer of interpretation. You see events again, but filtered differently.
So it keeps twisting. Sounds like you can't get too comfortable with any one version of events.
Precisely. The reviewer mentions that even if one twist felt a bit predictable later on, others really keep you guessing. Josie is described as, I think the term was, slippery.
Slippery. I like that. Hard to get a handle on.
Exactly. Especially when this other subplot involving someone called Nathan comes up.
Okay, interesting. And the review noted that small details from the beginning become important later. I always appreciate that kind of plotting.
Me too. That feeling of, oh, that's why that was mentioned. It makes the whole thing feel quite intricate, like a puzzle.
So what about the characters overall? If Josie isn't likable, or any of them?
Well, this is where the review is quite frank. It basically says, no, not really.
Okay, refreshingly honest.
Josie, as we said, manipulative, dishonest, maybe even believes her own lies eventually, opportunistic.
Got it.
And her husband, Walter, their relationship is described as deeply dysfunctional, even creepy and unsettling.
Yikes.
The reviewer actually found their interactions maybe the least engaging part, which is interesting, right? How much do you need to like characters in a thriller?
That's a really good question. Sometimes the fascination comes from the dysfunction itself, I suppose.
Maybe. And the review suggests Walter isn't just a victim here. He's described as incredibly passive, contributing to the toxic dynamic.
Okay. So he's complicit in his own way.
Seems like it. Then there's Alex, the podcast host.
Right, the one who gets pulled into Josie's story. How does she come across?
Amiable, the review says. Likeable enough on the surface, but also maybe frustratingly naive.
Oh, how so?
Easily swayed by Josie, apparently. Lets Josie get way too close, infiltrate her life. It's an interesting contrast. Professionally savvy, maybe, but personally vulnerable.
That vulnerability being exploited. A classic theme.
Very much so. And the review points out how those Netflix sections later give you another view on things Alex and Josie experienced, offering context maybe they didn't have or didn't share.
So it constantly layers the perspectives, reinforcing that unreliable idea.
Exactly. It sounds like the book really leans into being character-driven, especially when Josie is being recorded for the podcast.
Because you know she's likely lying, but maybe not entirely.
Precisely. The reviewer found those parts compelling because you're actively trying to sift through it. What's real, what's performance, and as it goes on, the atmosphere apparently gets darker and darker.
Sounds intense.
So, wrapping up the reviewer's overall take, despite the unlikable characters, they found it really gripping.
Okay, so the plot and the concept carry it.
Seems so. A plot that keeps you guessing, an innovative structure with the podcast and documentary elements. They felt it was complex, unpredictable, and ultimately a really captivating read. Another strong one from Lisa Jewell, in their opinion.
All right, let's distill this for you listening. The reviewer's final take seems pretty clear. None of this is true. Works. It delivers on that cool premise.
Yeah, the execution sounds good. Engaging, keeps you guessing right to the end.
Yes.
They definitely thought it was an enjoyable, complex thriller.
So key takeaways from this review would be that great hook, the podcast about the sinister woman.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Plus the use of cliffhangers and twists, some expected, some not. That Nathan subplot and the Netflix doc impact later on.
And those character dynamics. Manipulative Josie, passive Walter, naive Alex. That whole unsettling relationship between Josie and Walter.
Don't forget the unique structure, the podcast recordings, the documentary snippets offering different views, and how character-driven it feels, especially listening to Josie spin her tales.
All leading to that unreliable narrative experience.
Exactly.
Okay, so based on this review, with its focus on unreliable narrators and dark secrets hiding in plain sight, here's something to chew on. When you take someone's seemingly ordinary life and turn it into a podcast, especially one where truth and lies get tangled, what's the most unsettling part of that? For the person, but also for us, the audience.
That's a deep one.
What does our fascination with these kinds of true crime stories, real or fictionalized, really say about us?
It definitely makes you think about the power of narrative and how easily things can get distorted when stories go public.
Food for thought. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the review of None of This Is True.
So the big question remains.
Read it or skip it.